Welcome to live stream number 194. My name is Lars Christensen, and I'm a little early, so there should be a clock kind of like ticking. About 3 minutes. I would not blame you if you're watching the recording to fast forward a few minutes. Then we'll get started right at the top of the hour here. I can see we are live on the YouTube. Let me just go in here and refresh to make sure we're also good on Facebook. It's good to be back. I've been a little bit around Texas and Detroit, and this week we're gonna do one live stream today. Gonna do one live stream tomorrow, and then I'm headed to LA, and then coming back Friday morning, and then headed to San Francisco the week after. Sorry, August gonna be a little like that. Eduardo is here, absolutely appreciate it. Star Citizen, ooh, that's a good name. Good to see you, man. Gabriel 74, thank you so much. Just giving everybody a chance to come in here and just make sure everybody is set for today's topic. What is more freedom? That's a good title. And how to go from models to T-Spline, or sculpting environment is also called. We're gonna kind of try to straighten all that out today if there's any confusion. Mike is here from the UK, absolutely appreciate it. Greg is here from Erie, PA. That is what is that? 2 hours, somewhat southwest. Love Erie, PA. Haven't been there for a while. Absolutely appreciate it, guys. What should I tell you? So, like I said, today, tomorrow, live streams. Then I'm gonna have to jump a trip to LA, then back home for the weekend, and then back for San Francisco. Then we should do some live streams, and then it is Seattle, and then I think September should be fairly good, though that I stuffed a week's of vacation in there, as my mom is coming from Denmark, so she's coming to visit. So no live streams that week. All right, we are also live on Facebook, and got Nikos from Greece, one of my absolutely favorite places to go. The best lasagna I've ever had in my life, I got in Greece. Who would have thought? I decided to wear my Autodesk University shirt today for a couple of things that I gotta try to wrap up here before we get on top of the hour. One is Autodesk University. That is happening in November 10th, 12th or something. I should have written that down. I will do a presentation there. I have a class there, and we will do a bunch of these generative design workshops. What I'm traveling around, hands-on sessions. So if you are planning on being in Vegas in November, then you see me there. And the other thing, I just got a quick announcement, is I will not be attending IMTS this year. I just want to make sure I say that. That's a big tools show in Chicago. I have promised some people that I would meet them there, but again, my mom is coming right that week, and it just became a little bit too much. Clock is ticking down. Enough about me, man. Now let's get into Fusion. Let me just get rid of the clock here, and then let's go. Hey everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time to join today's live stream. Today's topic is more freedom and how to go from model to T-Splines. That is also what we call the sculpting environment. If I do a decent job today, and you be the judge, thumbs up, thumbs down, you will feel a lot better about how this whole thing works with workspaces and all that stuff. I am just gonna jump into it kind of like head first, and let's go. So one of the questions I got the other day that kind of inspired me to this, and I really appreciate all your comments, all your emails, all that awesome stuff. One of the questions I got was, wait a minute, I do not have this sculpting workspace in my dropdown. Why is that? Well, the reason you don't have that is because the way that this is done inside of Fusion is maybe interesting. I don't know. You be the judge. The way you normally will see me to go into the sculpting workspace is by going up and click on Create Form. that will open up, as you can see when I click on that, that will open up the sculpt workspace. This is also what we call T-Splines. And we might talk a little bit more about that if we have the time today. You will see you get a warning about this. This is nothing bad. This is just want to make sure you know. And you can see here, you can say, don't show me again. I normally just like to have it on. When you are in the T-Spline environment, be aware of that no history is recorded in T-Splines. Now, I'm just going to get out of this. I'm just going to actually hit the red X up here and don't save. So I'm back to like where we were just a second ago. Because the other way you can get the sculpt on your menu is by right-clicking up here and say do not capture design history. Now I'm going to come back to this in just a second, but I'm going to click on it anyways just to show you. Click on that, hit continue, and if you hear if you hear some humming, there's a helicopter sounds like passing right over. Can you hear it? Oh, maybe you can. It's kind of cool. Sorry. Too easily distracted, man. So if you right click here and you say do not capture design history, this reflects to this down here. And I'm going to show you that in a second. But if I click on that and say, okay, I know, then you will see that bar goes away down there. And now you have the sculpt, it's the sculpt right here. So that is how you can get to it. Now normally, I'm going to X out of this again, don't save. Like I said, normally what you will see me do is I will just click on this one here and hit OK to this, and I have the sculpt workspace, and now you will see that it's been recorded down in the timeline. Now let's go ahead here and just create something. So we can click here up here and create. You can see we have different shapes, and we have used these before when we built I think yeah, some different stuff. We've used this. Let's just click on a box and draw up a what is a T-Spline box. Now T-Splines or sculpt, same thing. The technology is called T-Spline technology. The neat thing about T-Splines is that everything is staying on curvature to each other. And we've talked about this in the past. We talked about curvature. If you want to impress your friends with some curvature knowledge, find that live stream if you search for it in the YouTube playlist. But the curvature means that everything is staying, there's a curvature kept on the model. What means inside of sculpting, if you right click and edit form, click on this space, and I maybe drag up here, you can see how we're really keeping the curvature. And I just select the face and did that with. You can also select a line, and you can pull on that. Or as you probably also have seen me do, click on a point and you can drag on a point. So the neat thing about this is that as you're pulling and dragging in T-Spline models, is that all the faces are staying. See when I'm pulling out on this thing, they're staying curvature consistent. There's probably a better term for that. In here, they will always keep the curvature. That's one of the things that you use a lot in the consumer environment. Now, enough of that. When you are done being inside a sculpt and you hit the finish form, what happens? This now becomes a solid body, and that's what we normally want to end up with. Now, we are going to talk about today how to get a solid back into becoming a sculpt, but generally speaking, we want to end up with a solid body, and that's really what we have here is as good as a standard solid. It's totally a solid. Now, there's no history on how this was really created, but let me just show you. If I go in and say create a new sketch, so now we are back in the model tab that we should feel pretty good about. Click on that one, and if I select that face there, look from the top, and I hit C for circle, and I'll draw a 55 millimeter circle, hit Q for press pull, hold down, select that profile in there. you will see that I can drag a hole through there, and that has been recorded down on the timeline. Now this is, of course, this hole is fully parametric. I can right click and I can hit edit, and I can double click on the dimension, and I could make it 35 if I wanted to, right? So by having this timeline down here, we're keeping that parametric environment. Now, one other quick thing, just to show you, and again, I hope I add some value to your day, is whenever I'm talking a lot, especially if you're fairly new to Fusion or CAD in general. I'm talking a lot about there's only two places you can ever sketch a 2D sketch. It is either on a face or on a plane. Now, right now you're normally used to on a face you can start a sketch, but we can't start a sketch on these faces. Why not? Because they are flat. They're not flat. If they were flat, you could start. You can't do it now because they are curved, and Fusion can't place that. So then you are tempted to do it on a face, but you only have, or a plane, but you only have these three planes. You can hear that I've been gone for a little while. Now, be aware of that up here you have all the different construction planes, and that's what you many times will do. Many times you will create something like an offset plane, and let's just turn that back on again and select a plane like this, a construction plane, and now you can sketch on that. And those planes, you can turn those in angles and do all kinds of good stuff. But now we're back to where I was before, where we can place a sketch on that plane. And again, I should fully define it, but let's just hit Q, and then now I could either make another cut, for example, all the way through that part. You can do all those different things in here. And notice down in the timeline, again, everything has been recorded. Now, if we want to change the overall scope, the T-Spline environment, we can right click and just say edit, and it tells us we're going back into the T-Spline environment. We hit OK to that, and now you will see again, as you've been used to, that we are back in history, and I could now completely move around whatever we want here, and when I hit finish form, that will get converted, and our parametric, what we call parametric, the holes in this case, all the ones that's controlled by sketches, will stay there too. So this is kind of how many times you will work with this. Let me give you the other way, and I'm gonna give you a pretty neat trick, I think. If you may know about this, but I don't. If you know about this, then you're fairly good at CAD. Let me put it like that. And that's my power ranking, not official. I'm gonna hit and open a new document. Another way you could work with this is, let me just create a new sketch. And I'm going to hit the S key and get my center rectangle. And let me draw a 50 by 50 millimeter rectangle here. Press Q, and let's make it 30 maybe. Okay. So the difference from here is that now I started out with standard parametric modeling. This is stuff you already feel fairly good with. Is the music still playing? Did the music play? Oh, I'm sorry, hang on. Haha. That must have been annoying. Is that better? Okay. Sorry. Man, I take a few days off and I lose my rhythm. I'm sorry. That's supposed to be the end music. All right. Hopefully you still got something out of the beginning. Like I said, this was kind of starting out with the sculpt work, shape, and work us through here. Be aware of that you can absolutely be in the standard parametric area here and go to sculpt. You'll get the same warning, right? now you will see here that, see how the whole thing becomes shadow, and you really can't select any, it looks like you can't select anything on our solid. You do have a couple of options. One will be to go up to utilities, go and click convert, and over here you get some different options. Now in here you could say B-Rep face to T-Spline, what means I'm going to click on B-Rep face. It will actually highlight the top face here. Click on that, and you now see that we get, if I hit OK, we do now have a face that is T-Spline, a sculpt environment. Right click, hit edit form, and let me just drag that up there, and now you will see that we have this. So now it's placed second down here, and this is fully okay. Now if I hit finish form, then you will see we get this. But don't be totally fooled. If we click over here on the arrow, you will see that we ended up with a body and a surface model. Now let me just turn the surface model off, and you will see we're back to where we were before. So the way I did this with the T-Spline, notice that the T-Spline just created a surface. When it converted the face of the solid, it didn't replace it. It just created a shell, a surface shell over the top of it. But here comes the cool thing, because there's going to be something cool in here. If you didn't knew this, then you are good with CAD. There is a function called replace face inside of Fusion. So what I can do is I can say replace face, and it's asking for the source face. What will be, and I'm going to hide the surface for a second. That will be the face on the solid model. Then the target face is going to be our surface body here. Hit OK. Now nothing really changed over here. You did get a replace face icon down here, but check this out. When I click on the surface body to hide it, we actually did now have placed that surface on top of that. I hope that somewhat made sense. If this was a little confusing, scroll back and watch it again. But what this really do is it takes that surface shell and it replaced it on top of that square body. Now the surface didn't go away. You could right click on it and say remove it if you wanted to, but and then it will go away. Remove, then it will go away. We won't have that body. But I don't think I normally would do that. I don't think that necessarily. Maybe in the end, if you decided you want to clean everything up, but normally I would just leave that there. Just did a Control Z. I would leave that there. Just turn it off. Now, so that's another way. Now again, the cool thing about this history line is that I can right click on that sculpt and say edit sculpt, hit OK, and I'm kind of back into this sculpting environment. So if I, for example, let me just add symmetry here. If I, for example, now went in and say let's edit this point, let's just make something nice looking like this. When I hit finish form, that would be completely parametrically converted over to that top of that body there. So that was kind of two ways to using the timeline to go really with sculpting a T-Spline. So I hope this just kind of like have caught people up to the way to work with this. Either start it out with a starting shape and you can work with it from the beginning. That's how you would do a lot of like consumer products. But you can also start out with your standard shape and then jump in and do it as a sculpt and kind of implement it in here. I've also done it with other models. There was a coffee cup we did where we didn't use replace face, but we kind of used the combine tool. So there's other live streams if you missed them on that. But I wanted to take it one step further and kind of show you one of the ways that you can go from a model environment to a solid that could be helpful. So let me just go back out here to my projects, and I wanted to do it with this airfoil. Now this airfoil here, hang on, open that up. This airfoil here has a long history on this live stream. Some of you guys might already be sick and tired of it. This airfoil started out with a question from one of you guys. How do you import and create an airfoil? So this was a bunch of data points that we turned into a sketch geometry that looks somewhat like this. We imported this from a website, and we imported kind of like the two different ones, and then we used the loft to create this actual shape of this airplane wing. Now this turned into a how to make an airplane rib. This turned into the cool generative design workshop environment and all that stuff. But if you wanted to create this turned into a T-Spline shape, can you do that? You can definitely get close. So let me show you those different ways. And again, you know, if you're brand new to Fusion, this might be a lot of information very quickly thrown at you, and I kind of apologize. You can always rewind on the YouTube, right? As soon as we're done with the live stream, we'll be back up and be in a recording, and you can go back and watch it again. And if you're still confused, watch it again, have a drink, leave a comment, and I'll try to answer you as fast as I can. Here's one. I want to show you two different ways. One trick here with the history line on would be to say, all right, I'm gonna go in and say create form, hit OK, and we gotta get the same thing as you saw before. Now, if we go in and we say convert, like this, and we can select that face again. And now, one thing I wanted to show you is that when you convert a B-Rep face into T-Spline or into Sculpt, you get an opportunity to control how many squares or rectangles you are getting on the model. So in this case here, how many faces? So if I add it up in one direction, you will see I get kind of like in one direction here, 8 there, and if I do it on the bottom one down here, you will see I get more on the screen as I do that. So be aware of that you can control this creation. So the B-Rep right now is throwing a blanket over our shape. However, it comes with a little bit of a warning because when I hit OK to this, you might be able to see that there is a little bit of shadows. I hope you can see there's a little bit of shadows right here on your screen, and you're saying to yourself, well, wait a minute, that was not a very good, conversion. Well, it was. Maybe not, or maybe it was. That depends. We can argue about that. Part of that, friends, is coming that, like I said earlier, that the T-Spline or the Sculpt environment needs to keep a continuously, curvature on the model, and that's the rule for T-Splines. A Sculpt environment, it needs to keep that consistency of curvature, so it will overrule that with the original shape. However, there's a really cool tool. There's a couple of cool tools. First of all, you can always go in to modify and say insert edge, and if I double click on this edge, you will see the green line here. You can always add more edges, so that's one thing to know about. And you can see as soon as I did that, see how it kind of like folded it worse off in this area. Let me just go back one, undo. See the shape here. Then keep an eye when I insert a insert edge right here on the green. 3, 2, look at the shape, look right in this area right here. When I hit OK, see how it changed? That's because it's overriding, it's keeping the curvature on that T-spline. Now, here's one cool trick. Modify, I've used this before, and the pull command. And now you can actually pull these points down towards our solid. So now, of course, the more points you have, the more accurate model you're gonna get. So I hope you can kind of see how it's pulling. You should be able to see it definitely on this one. It's pulling all these points, so now all the points is touching the model. Okay, so I hope that's give you a good idea. Not much is going on here on top because Alexa probably did a dang good job. So this will definitely make sure we get a lot closer onto that outline. You can still kind of see that there. So that's one way that we can do this. Now I'm going to hit OK to this. I'm not going to finish form right now, but I want to show you another thing. So let me just go back out here and let me open up this model one more time. Just not going to save anything today. Oh, let me just exit out of this. Don't save. Open this model up one more time, because then some people would say, okay, that's all great, but since we're working with T-Splines and we're trying to maybe convert this solid into a T-Spline, why do we even want to care maybe any more about the history? And they could have a decent point. Do we need the history? Don't need the history? I would probably keep the history in this one, but then again, who am I to say what is right or wrong? So what we could do here, and it's going to show it a little bit easier on your model. If you right click, we can say no capture design history. We talked about that earlier, right? And if I click on that, now be aware, if you ever do that, you're going to lose this and you cannot get it back. Hit continue, you see that it's gone. Now if we go back into the sculpt environment, we can kind of do the same thing as we did before. We can say convert, B-wrap, and in this case here, I'm just going to leave it at 4. Hit OK. Now you will actually see the solid in here. If I click on the bodies, you will see we got the bodies and we got the T-spline. Now let me hide that for a second. So we're back to the solid. What I like to do in here, right click, hit appearances, and let's get paint, glossy paint. Take a green and drag that over on our T-spline there. I hide that on the solid body. Let's turn on the T-spline. That's boring gray. Let's right click and go appearances there. Let's drag a red one over on that. That just makes it a little bit easier to kind of see. Now we can, when we overlay them, we can kind of see this, and that shows up perfectly how these two are working kind of like a little bit against each other. Now I'm going to hide the solid body, do what I did before by adding an edge, and I'm just going to double click, and when I double click on that edge, I'm selecting the whole edge. That's why I just double click. No, you got to double click. There you go. So now I'm just adding that more to it. Again, turn the solid on. Now it's a little bit easier to see that here it's definitely fat, but down there we can see the green coming through. If I went in and did the same thing as before, we can pull it, and you can actually multi-select everything if you want to. So now you can pull everything a little bit closer. Now, of course, since this is the solid body here, you can or the T-spline, you can always kind of pull things like this, or we could select the edge. Oops, not the whole edge. We can select the edge, and you can kind of work that around. So this will give you some of that flexibility, same way as I did it before with the timeline down here. You can add more edges, and you can make it, refine it, and it will get very, very close, very, very close in this conversion by using this convert and use the face one. But I wanted to wrap up with one last thing, and then hopefully, again, this is useful. Because if I open up, remember our Autodesk A here, we machined that in one live stream. There's all the different toolpath on it. And I actually provided access to this model here. Now you could be tempted to go in and say, okay, let's go back into Sculpt. Again, you have noticed that I can go into the Sculpt because I don't have the timeline down here. You could go in here and say convert, and with the B-Rep here, but you will notice that the B-Rep is B-Rep faces, so it's individual faces. And that means that, well, this becomes, it's not really like it's converting the whole model over. We can actually somewhat do that, and that's what I wanted to wrap up with today. Now, it's not necessarily the perfect workflow, and this is maybe where I hopefully can explain this so you're not too confused. The things you're seeing inside of Fusion are, well, the name Fusion, fused together of different technologies. So you got the parametric modeling workspace that we're normally very comfortable with. You draw a 2D sketch, you extrude it out, you put some holes in it. Then you got the T-Spline, or the Sculpt environment. That is another platform, another technology that is running. So the two was not developed in a linear kind of workflow. It was kind of, all right, so we got the parametric modeling in here, and then, you know, what I would call the inventor kind of thing. And then we had the T-Spline technology, and let's fuse that together inside of Fusion. So that's why you cannot just jump from one to the other without like have to work a little bit. Is because they're not, that was not kind of like how they were written. But there is ways that you can work around this, and one of them is actually, and I'm gonna cancel out of this, I'm not gonna do this. One of them is actually to create this solid model into a mesh, because if you're looking at this, at the inside of the Sculpt environment, if you're looking at that convert and the drop down, you will see there's 3 different options in here. The first one is how to convert a T-Spline into B-Rep, or what I would call a solid model. That's where we normally want to end up, like I said in the beginning. But this is already a solid model, so that's kind of like we want to do the opposite. We talked about B-Rep faces. That's what we've done up till this point. We converted a face into B-Rep. And then there's one called Quad Mesh into T-Splines. Now, all this is coming with some trade-offs. So again, this is, you know, with great power come great responsibilities. So you gotta kind of think a little bit about this. Now, notice one thing though. This is a quad mesh, and a quad mesh means not STL. See, if I convert this to an STL, and the easiest way to convert this to this solid model to an STL, right click, say save as an STL. There's different ways to do it. But in here you get different options, how refined you want it. But an STL file, we talked about this, is triangular mesh. Bunch of different triangles. But here we are looking to convert this into a quad mesh. So instead of a triangle, it needs to be 4-sided. And we cannot do that inside of Fusion yet, though Autodesk do have the technology to do this. It used to be called Memento back in the day, but now it exists inside of a program called Recap. I probably need to do a little bit more investigation before I talk too much about Recap, but there is a 30-day trial of it. And there's also, I think, a basic version, but I need to talk to somebody about Recap before I talk too much about that here. But Recap will actually let you convert a STL triangular mesh into a quad mesh, what is a 4-sided mesh. So if I hit save right here, it's going to come and say I want to save this as an STL file. and you can rename it whatever you want. Let's say live stream, save that, and hit save. Now I just saved it as an STL file on my desktop. Now if I go and hit open up recap photo, load model, you will see that here is the STL file. Now notice there's also a lars obj. I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to open up the STL file, and here you see that STL file that we just saved out. Now here you can go to export, and if you go to the export model from recap, and I would buy somebody steak dinner if we get this inside of Fusion, and I would be surprised if one day it's not inside of Fusion. You can save it out as an OBJ quads, so that is what we need. Now here you get a target face count. This is one of my complaints about mesh files in general, is this whole thing. Now I decided before this to do it at 20,000, so the highest I can bring in, and we know that Fusion from other live streams can bring in 50,000, so 20,000 is pretty safe. Now when you hit export, it does take, I had it running on my computer for about, I would say, I don't think it was 10 minutes. It was probably closer to 5 minutes. So it takes a little bit of time. So I'm not going to do that right now. That was why I just saved out that OBJ you just saw. Now, open up an empty document. Anytime you bring in a mesh file, hit insert mesh, and let's select that. If we click this one here, we'll just bring in the one we just saved. This was the converted one. Bring that in, hit OK. Now I might be experimenting, I should say, between converting that in with 20,000 versus maybe 10,000, because you can see what happens is that it looked like it really, you know, it's taken those triangles and turned them into squares, and this is like translating, I don't know, Danish to Chinese. I mean, you know, something is gonna have to give in the translation. This is definitely not, you know, super great compared to the original model that had square, straight edges. You can definitely see here that there is some conversion here. I would probably, if I had the time, I would have tried to do this into a with a 10,000, see maybe get a little bit better. But you gotta remember that the software just takes big triangles and trying to convert it down and do that. But to the point that in here, if I turn off the do not capture history, if we go into the sculpt environment, we can now convert and select the quad mesh, because that is what that has now become. And we can select that whole thing and hit OK. And that is now it's going to be converted over to a T-Spline model right here. And that might, again, now we have 20,000 quad mesh that needs to be converted. There we go. So that might just take a couple seconds. But this is now a T-Spline model, meaning that if I go in here, let's Windows select something. If I select these, right click, hit edit form, I can now, you know, pull this, and now we're starting to use definitely some computer resources to do this. But as you can see, this is perfectly legit to kind of work with this. So hopefully that was not too much crazy environment or crazy explanation coming out of this. But I just wanted to just make sure that you see that when you're talking about this sculpting a T-Spline environment, how it can be in the beginning. And if you came in a little late, maybe just double check it. And I know there was some music playing. My end music was still playing. I apologize. So here was an example where we did it from the beginning with the T-Spline. Then there was an example where we kind of like came in with the T-Spline afterwards and made a solid out of that. The airfoil kind of where you can pull it down, and then in the end you do have options to convert solids like this into T-Spline. But it comes with a trade-off. If you're trying to do a whole model, normally you will probably just go in and take one or two faces that you need to work with, and then do the technique we used here, where you either use the replace face, or as we've done in a couple of live streams, using the combine tool. That, friends, that was today's live stream. Man, really appreciate you guys taking the time. Just gonna see here. All right. Yes, absolutely appreciate any type of feedback you have. Thumbs up if you like it. Thumbs down if you don't. Don't leave me a comment. I'm a little bit behind on that. If you send, my email address is down in the description area. You're absolutely more than welcome to send me any future topics you would like to see. That is actually how I kind of get inspired to do these. If you send me questions, because I saw somebody says here you can email me questions. I have a hard time keeping up. I'm trying in the morning just to kind of like answer the first few I can get to. But I read them all, and one day I will catch up. That's all I can. One day it will happen. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Be back tomorrow before I'm heading on my next generative design workshop road tour. So hope to see you tomorrow. Hope you have an awesome day. Facebook, YouTube, really appreciate it. Until tomorrow, take care.